Alright. Hey everyone, Xander Gaming. I'm going to do a tier list. It's going to be a tier list for the Union Arena trading card game. This tier list I think will be special for you guys to watch because I'm going to do a lot of decks. Not just what you see in the meta, but the game has such a rich profile of decks already. And I believe a lot of them aren't appreciated or talked about. And I do not believe that you have to run one of the decks I put into S tier to have fun at the game or even win at the game. Uh, but let's get into it. Let's kind of go through it. S tier means definitely super meta deck, tournament winning, or at least what you would think would be winning tournaments. A something that maybe you wouldn't pick as like the top three decks to win a tournament or something, but could definitely top in big tournaments. And really good decks, maybe fleshed out with a good enough support, or maybe it just does one thing really, really well and can match up good into other things. B is where the majority of decks should be, just meaning good decks, solid decks you can play. You can win with them, they do decent stuff. C would just be more like maybe the deck doesn't have enough support, but it's still cohesive enough to kind of say a deck. And then D just means the deck needs a lot of work, that doesn't have a lot going for it, and not a ton of support. I can only think of maybe one deck in mind from this list. But like you can see down here, I put a little bit of everything, mainly because I don't like seeing tier list where people just have like one color, and I know it makes it easier for the tier lists and more like easy to digest, but the colors have more going on than just one thing. So every color, I think I put at least two decks on here from each archetype and set, and maybe some even got more. But I'll just start off. Let's do Gone and Friends. This green is for Gone and Friends. This is a good deck. I think that it just doesn't have maybe a big following of people wanting to play it, and it can do a lot of different things. It has a couple good raid targets with the Gone in it. If you want to throw Kurapika as a top and you can, you don't have to. I think that the Leorio helps give you a lot of pressure, being able to boost. If blocking draw 2 and this Gone is really good. And it's got some good clear spells with the Fishing Rod, being able to clear something off. And it's just a good all-around deck. It does a little bit of everything. Definitely A tier deck. I know maybe a lot of people don't see this deck in play, so they don't know too much about it, but you boost your board, you keep your guys boosted, and you can swing for some good damage. Kind of a mid-range, rangy deck, but I think really, really good. It's a good deck. I like it. Let's go a newer deck here. So this is the Four Holy Swordsman, and I think his name is Toto. No, Toto's one of my favorite guys. Kokias. What's the other guy's name? It's a cool deck. You bring out the Four Swordsmen, you get special things for having them all out there, and then Kyoshiro Todo. That's his name. Yeah, Todo. Not spelled the other way, Todo. I knew it was Todo. Yeah. But it's a really cool deck because a lot of the raid targets can go on a lot of the other people. So like how this just says raid, Four Holy Swords. Raid, Four Holy Swords, Kyoshiro Todo. And then Toto has his own specific one, which is the main one. Activate main from the front line once per turn. All Four Holy Swords Fendies gain 500 BP. So he comes out, boost them all, and then when attacking, you get to set one as active. So a really quick kind of low to the ground deck. The payoff is not really high, but it can steal some games. I like this deck a lot, and I would definitely give it a try. If you're looking for a cheap Kogias purple deck to play, and you kind of like swarm the board and kind of playing a kind of aggressive, fast deck, I would play that. It's really cool. And if you like the whole aesthetic of the Four Holy Swords, kind of like samurai style of the mech too, pick it up. It's a cool deck. I do like it a lot. You boost your people up, you swing, you restand, and does some fun stuff. I guess with that in mind, kind of staying in Code Geass, I'll go to the Ashford Academy. Similar aspect as that it's, a quick to the ground deck. It does what it does fast. The Ashford Academy lets you, restand one of the Ashford people so you can swing early. Um, Not as versatile in the raid targets because they have to be specific. So I would say these two decks are neck and neck down here. Both these decks, if your opponent doesn't know how much pressure you could put on quick, you can steal some games. These are good. These are good decks. But they're both kind of like a more fleshed out, like kind of Renji Rush style deck. But you actually raid and do things and kind of push your people out quick. They both kind of do the similar things, actually, which is pretty cool. Just really the style that you like. If you like the Ashford people, maybe play this if you're wanting to go with a faster deck, or if you just like the Four Swordmans, go with that one. All right, let's go Yuji. Let's go ahead and talk about it. This deck's crazy. One of the best decks for sure. No doubt that it's an S tier. Wins tournaments, going to win tournaments. You're gonna see this deck. But it's not unbeatable. I would say that it can lose sometimes because maybe you don't see the fingers. If they see the fingers early and fast, you're gonna have a rough time playing against Yuji and Sukuna. But there are two different versions of this deck, and I guess I should put those two out. So there's like a version that you would play with the structure deck, or the one where you can't play with the structure deck to play with the searcher. So both versions I like of the deck a lot. Just depending on how you want to play the game. The Sukuna from the structure deck is really strong, but I do like searching the searcher a little more. So my version of the deck and my brother's version I made for him, we run the searchers as opposed to being able to use that Sukuna, but makes it a little more consistent so you're not feeling like you're not seeing the fingers. This deck can really high roll you down if they see the fingers early and can put it on the board pressure. The payoff's good. Plenty of raid targets. Consistency with drawing. The blue engines. Really, really good deck. Fun deck, too, to play. I will say that. That's why it's so popular. I think it's the most represented deck in the last couple of tournaments for a good reason. But it is pricey. Like this deck, way more expensive because these UGs are going to be pricey to get. But a really cool, strong deck. You can bounce stuff back to hand, stun stuff. It's a cool deck. It does a little bit of everything. Really, really strong deck. Plenty of support for it. Cool deck. Let's go Yamamoto. This, I feel like, needs a little more consistency. So you have the 13 court guards, and there's plenty of them, yes, but it just feels like the deck needs more. And it's kind of weird to say that considering it has a lot of 13 court guards, but the 13 court, they're all so spread out in the typings, and the colors. Well, no, the color, yeah, they're green. The payoff for him is just not that it's almost not. You raid into him, you get to boost all your 13 court guards, and you can move them up from your back line to the front line. So there is that aspect. If you get into him and they don't see that play coming, but as soon as you, like, even if that does happen to you, you still might be okay. They might raid into him, move everything up, hit you with a lot of big guys, but it just needs a little more. I also haven't put a ton of time into the deck, but I feel bad putting it to C, but I don't think even with these two decks that it could maybe keep up with them. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. Like, tell me otherwise what y'all think about Yamamoto, but he is the worst of the big payoff decks, where I feel like a couple of the other decks that have, the 6, 7, 8 drops, it's a little more impactful when they come on the board. So I'll put him down in the C tier. All right, let's go let's. All right, Phantom Troop, really cool deck. If you love the Phantom Troop, definitely play with these characters. I think it's a cool, strong deck. It does a little bit of everything, and in a perfect world where everyone spent a lot of time with the deck, I would put this as an A tier deck. But since I think it takes you putting time to really learn how you want to play with the deck, the cards you want to play, I'll put it in B tier. But I do think that this deck can top in a tournament. I do. The right pilot with the right list, with so many decks that are kind of the meta decks now, I do think a lot of these roguish style decks can do well. The payoff for playing the Phantom Troop, if you put the time into it, I think will be worth your time. All right, let's go Ginthru, the Bomber. This is a really cool deck. Very interesting playstyle with the specified slots. You put bombs on people, you blow them up. It's another deck, I think, if you put the time into it, it's really strong. And I'm scared when I play Bomber decks because if you see your stuff early as Bomber, you can really, it's not fun to play against. Like, you're just sitting there oppressing the person you're playing against, blowing up their stuff. But in the same sense, though, if you know how to play against the Bomber, you know to take out Basho and the other guy that helped kind of him search. I might be getting the name wrong. Basho's someone else from Hunter x Hunter, but his searcher in it that helps keeping him consistent to put the stuff on top of the deck. It's a good deck. And it can definitely top tournaments. But once again, it's something that, like, it takes someone putting time into the deck. And I would definitely put it above the Phantom Troop. But I do think it's a really strong deck. Both these decks, I feel like all three of these could be bottom A, top of B tier. I put the Hunter x Hunter Guns and Friends deck above it just because a little easier to play. I will say that, and a little more consistent, to where both of these are a little more piece and combo reliant. Whereas Gone is a good get big, swing hard and heavy deck, which is a little more simple to play, but there are some nuances to it, keeping your people at certain DPs. But we'll do that for now. But yeah, all three of those decks, all these decks, I think can do well. Let's go Yellow Bleach. Control deck, fleshed out. It does some good things. I think B tier. I think that this deck can do some cool things, and the yellow kill spell they have. I'll go ahead and grab the other Yellow Bleach deck and put them both kind of the bottom B tier. They're good decks. They're solid decks. The people I know who play these decks are really good with them. And even then, sometimes when they see almost everything and even get some, special or color triggers in their life, it's still just not like, it doesn't have that like big impact power, which is weird because they have the damage to the impacts, the stun on your board and stuff. I just think some other decks, like I was talking about with these two here, the Phantom Troop and the Bomber, kind of can control what your opponent's doing, but also have some like agency in the game. Where I think these two decks are a little slower, but if that's your play style, then definitely build these two decks. These two are really good, cool control decks for sure. You can win games with these decks. I wouldn't see either of these two winning a tournament or topping, though. I will say that, but they are good, cool decks to play. And depending on how good you are at these decks and figure out how they play into some of the top decks, you might do well with the deck. Anything in B tier, I think you can take, and if you put the time into it, try to top a tournament. All right, let's go Gojo. I built this deck. I was super excited about him, but he needs a raid. The 2 cost, I think AP one is fine. I don't mind that one not being a raid. He could have been. But you just lose the speed of the game not being able to raid. And none of him having a raid target makes it really slow. And I do love this deck. I played a lot, and I can win sometimes with it. I've won games against Yuji decks with it. But I think for the most part, it just needs some more support and help. Uh, I am a defender of the deck, and I wouldn't be truthful if I put it up higher than this. I just think that it's not as cohesive as any of these decks. So sometimes you really just are playing things and don't get to play the game. And there's different packages you can run with it. You can run like no Nobara package in it, or the Panda package, or other packages you can run in the deck. But trying to build a deck, based just around Gojo is a little slow. But if you can curve out and maybe your opponent's a little bit slower and not seeing some of their stuff, you can be really impressive with this deck, with the Hollow Purple and the Unlimited Void, controlling the board. It could be really oppressive deck. It's just not consistent enough for me to put it any higher than that. But a good top end, strong top end, I'll put it above because I do think that it is better than Yamamoto. All right, let's go pizza. This is C2 pizza. You're really just playing all the pizza cards, playing some draw engine that the red has, and trying to get to the pizza. And the payoff for her is really, really, really good if you can get her out with all the pizzas in the trash. So this character gains all abilities listed below. If you have the required number of pizza affinity cards, you run 8 of them. 4 of the giant pizza and 4 of the delivery pizza. 2 or more in your sideline. Play it set active. So you'll have a 4,000 set to active. 4 or more, it has impact 1. And 6 or more, during your turn, this character gains 1,000 BP and double attack. So that's really where you want to get to with this card. You want to hold on to these. You're going to be tempted sometimes to just try to throw out a 4K body, but you really don't want to do that with this deck. You want to let them take your life. Hopefully some of the pizzas are in there, and save these cards and really just try to use the low end of the deck to keep you in the game, and then bring her out. She costs, you only ever have to be at 5 energy max. I think it's just 4 really. I think the Lelouch might be 5, but I think he's 4 also. He's a raid target. I don't know. I can look for it. Sorry. Yeah, the Lelouch is 5. So he's the only reason you have to go over that. But he lets you clear a small body on the board too for some control aspect. Yeah, 1 character 2,000 less BP on your opponent's frontline and sideline. If you have 4 or more events, which you should with the pizzas, if you're going well, 4,000 PP or less. But another good card in the deck. It's a really cool deck. The payoff is cool. I love it just because she's one of my favorite characters. But getting there can be rough sometimes. Sometimes you just don't see the pizzas. But if you can get there, her payoff is strong. Double attack, impact can really push some games big time. You really want the big play in this, and I don't see a lot of people talk about, is you want to have 2 of her in your hand with getting your AP point back. So play her with the 6 in the trash. You'll have her out. Play back the card to get your AP back to 2, and then play another one out. That's the dream. Then you're able to swing, 5,000 BP, double attack twice with impact, and that's a super strong play, and it comes up often because the deck cycles a lot. With that being said, I would say pizza. There's just so many good decks. I think it has to be here. I will put it above these 2 only because whereas these 2 don't have as much as like that push to end the game, C2 definitely does. C2 big time has a way to end the game for sure. She's really cool. It's a cool deck. I definitely recommend you trying it if you want a cheap, fun to play red deck. Let's go. All right, let's go another big meta person. The Lancelot. Suzaku. Super strong deck. Not as fast as Yuji and Sukuna, but the payoff is huge. The highest payoff in the game. The top end for this deck is absolutely insane. You get into the 8-drop and you are putting in work. This card has damage too, so you don't have to be rated. The card just generically has that on there. So if you're ever in an instance where you will play it for 8 onto your field, no problem. you have damage 2. But raids on Suzaku, impact 1, and when played, choose one character 5 out unless beeping your opponent's front line and sideline it, which gets rid of practically everything in the game. This card is so strong, worth the payoff. And that's just kind of what the whole deck is about, trying to get into, both your Lancelots. You have a 6 and an 8. The good thing about this one is when it's sideline, it gives you a Susaku back, so it helps keep the deck a little more consistent. But trying to get ramped up to the 8, if your opponent has any way to manipulate your energy line, you're going to have a hard time trying to get there. But the payoff, it's got the biggest payoff in the game. Super strong deck. Expensive to build, I will say that at the moment, but really, really strong. If you like Suzaku and you want to build the deck, definitely recommend it. Really strong deck. Let's go Ghetto. Purple. A tier. This deck, similar to how Ashford and the Four Swords can kind of swarm the board, Ghetto can do that too, while also like really controlling the board. And I say Ghetto, Mahito. They're both put together. You have to run both in the deck, but Ghetto's the bigger person, the higher cost. But it just manipulates, blowing up your own guys to make your opponent have to blow stuff up, and it can really. There's some turn 3 plays with the Ghetto. If they do it, you kind of just lose because it puts out so much pressure and control and messes up what you're doing. It's a really strong deck. If you don't know what the deck does and you go to play against it and you're not prepared for it, watch out. It's a cool deck. I like it a lot. I think a very slept-on deck. I would put it above the Gone and Friends. That's how highly I think of this deck. I've seen a lot of people play with it too, and it does take a good pilot though. So talking about like playability and pilot too, if I valued maybe how easy it is to pilot more, I put the Gone ahead, but I still think that the Ghetto play is just so strong on your 3 action point turn to be able to mess stuff up that Gone doesn't. Gone doesn't really have that same power to like push an early turn for like the 3 or 4 damage. All right, let's go. Oh, I'm blanking on his name right now for this character. But this deck it's a good deck. It's definitely one of my favorite Bleach decks to see people play. I don't have it built, but plenty of people at our card shop have it built, and it's really cool. Let's go to him. I know it starts with a T. I'm blanking. So embarrassing. Yeah, Toshiro. There we go. Toshiro. Raid on Toshiro. When played, choose it at one character in your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. It remains resting until the end of their next attack phase. If 6 or more other 13 court guard squads Infinity are on your field, choose up to one character in your opponent's front line, switch it and all characters on your opponent's energy line to resting instead, which is really strong. If you have that set up with the court guards, which is easy to do in the deck, you have plenty of them to play with. And they don't have to be different names. It just has to be different cards. Really cool. Low to the ground with the 4. The other card helps you cheat it out. Unahara. She costs 6, but she lets you look at the top 4, reveal it to one character, 13 court guards, affinity, and 4 less energy, and add to your hand. Place remain at the bottom of your deck in any order. Then reduce the AP cost next character with 4 less energy from your hand. So you go into her. She lets you play out Toshiro and hopefully be able to stun the board. Pretty good deck. I like the deck. It's pretty strong and definitely, I think, up in the A tier. I think you can control some of these decks a little bit more before they can get going. And it having the 4 play cost raid is really strong. And I think a lot of people, since the deck's been out for a little bit, maybe just aren't playing as much. But this deck is really strong. And it really isn't super reliant on like trying to see certain pieces. Obviously him, but you have the Unahara, and a lot of people play some other top-end green stuff for it. But I like the deck. It's really strong. It's a good control deck that can, swing early as well. Let's go. Let's mix it up. Let's go back to some purple. Toto. My favorite character in JJK. Super funny, cool guy, and the deck is really good. I may get some flack for saying this, but I think Toto is really strong. If you put the time into Toto, uh, with that saying, I think he needs some more support. And even then, the deck is a solid deck. You can manipulate your opponent's front line and their energy, which can be a problem big time for some of these top end decks that require their energy be set up right. So I think Toto will be in an even better spot now that Code Geass has come out and added another big swinger into the format. But he has extra damage. There's ways to give him extra damage and impact. You take some of the aspects of some of these other swarm decks too, with being able to play some of the other Jujutsu High characters out. The combo, one of the 3 drops lets you play another one, and then that one might let you search one. So there's a lot of playability with the deck. And one of the most slept on cards, I got to go back to searching for this deck, is the option card, the event card, the that lets you be able to get one from your hand, from your discard back to your hand. I don't want to read it improperly. Let's just go to it. And then be able to play something, which is super strong. Being able to do that. Where is it at? Goodwill Event. So this card, add up to 1 character with Kyoto Jujutsu High Infinity from your sideline to your hand. Play up to 1 character with fulfilled required energy, 1 AP cost, and Kyoto Jujutsu High Affinity from your hand set to resting onto your field, or perform raid with it, which is super strong. Being able to add a Toto, say they cleared one of your Totos, you have one down, play this card, get the Toto back, play it immediately. You're only using the 1 action point still, and to go straight into the Toto. That play is such a strong play to do. Big time benefit for the deck, being able to swarm with the little one too. And then you usually run this Miwa in there with it too. This is a strong card. I think this card shouldn't be 2 action points. I don't want to get too much into spills. I'm just trying to do a tier list, but I think maybe just upping the energy and make her less of an action point. But this is another key card in the deck for sure. And I think Toto is super strong. I'll put it. I think it's neck and neck with the Geto. I'll put it above it because I think that Toto can swarm a little bit and put pressure on people and manipulate their front and back line, which is really good to do. I love him a lot. He's got good clear spell too. Toto's good. Give it a try for sure. Let's go. We'll stay with purple. Renji. So this is Renji in the sense of like Renji Rush. And I will say that now a lot of people have figured this out. It's a good B tier deck. I wouldn't put it above some of these, even though like you will see this win in a tournament. But I think it's more you're high rolling some of the stuff in this deck. I see a lot of times where like people lose so much agency in the game from hard playing a lot of the 4s instead of just building the deck how like you maybe should. And not a lot of people know how to play against that. I don't see this deck topping as much in the future. As opposed to just the normal, which we can just go just normal Ichigo. This is doing what this deck does, but you just get to raid. Like, I think the Renji Rush is going out of style, especially with some of these other decks. I'll actually put him down here below the other decks that I think kind of do what he does, but better. Because these are just all kind of Renji Rush style decks, but with raid. And easier to do. So I think the Renji Rush thing is going down. Now, granted, I think this one will probably top tournaments here and there because if they just see the Renjis, especially early on, and they're playing them all, and you don't see an out for them, they can push the game. But I think that I don't like the way that the deck plays. Also, I think it's against the spirit of what Union Arena is trying to do. But I do think that now there's so many other decks, people won't be playing it, and I think that a lot of people know how to play against it now. But not to skip over, I do think Ichigo is S tier still for sure. Consistent cycles, plenty of ways to clear the board, great raid targets. It's just a really, really, really strong deck. And I would honestly say if I had to pick between these 3, which one? Maybe that order, if the order... I've been making the order matter. So I'd probably put this order here so far because Yuji Sukuna high roll is insane. It's the best, early high roll start that you could do. And then similar aspect of this, if either of these two decks see that against this deck, then Suzaku just loses. But if they are not seeing everything in a perfect curve, Suzaku can out these decks pretty easy. But just going based off of you know 5 games, those will consistently do that more than probably he does. All right, let's go Nobara. Nobara stun is pretty much what people were playing with this. This is kind of in tandem with Megumi as well. People kind of play them both together, but I've seen different lists where his package kind of just goes off of the Shinigami, and then she is kind of paired up with Gojo and Panda. Um, it's a cool deck. I like this deck a lot. In the sense, it's hard to say why I think that Toshiro is better than her, but yeah, they're probably about the same. I mean, she has the double blocker with the Panda. Um, I would put her over him, actually. I do like her a lot. I think that she can do a lot of things now that I'm thinking about it, into some of these other decks that maybe Toshiro can't do as well. I'll probably even bump her up a little bit more. Yeah, over Gone too. I think this is a good sleeper pick right now. If you want to build a deck that can kind of combat the meta and you don't want to play any of these decks, she can kind of control the board, do some cool things. Run the Panda as a double blocker, run the big Gojos in it, and it's a really good, solid, you know, kind of how like Geto is like good purple stuff. This is like good yellow JJK stuff. Really cool deck. I like her a lot. And to talk about Megumi, this is a really strong deck too. He has to go up. I don't know what I was thinking, trying to put him down. Probably, I'll put him. I wish I could just say they're both tied. No, because Megumi can definitely pop off faster if he sees the dogs and a lot of the things that he wants to do in the game. He can beat you really quick. He really can. Although a little less consistent, I think. Trying to find these pieces in here, like if you don't see the dogs, it feels really really bad not seeing the dogs. But he can do some cool things, and you can run some. With his deck though, you can't run some of the other packages that make him a little more consistent than Nobara. Definitely a higher ceiling, can win games maybe a little faster when he sees the stuff. But I think she controls and can do a little bit of, Swiss Army knife kind of deal. Whereas he can rush you down really fast and swing for six hits in a turn, which I don't think any other deck in the game has a turn that he can do with swinging and unsuspending, bringing your guys back up. He's very powerful. But the games that you don't see the dogs are so bad that I had to put him, lower on the A tier. But really strong, good deck. All right, let's go Blue Boy. Killua, specified slots. I'd actually put it just above the Renji Rush, below these Rush here. It's a cool deck, but it takes a lot of work. Like, you have to know this deck in and out. You have to run a lot of all the specified slot cards. But it can do some cool things with putting raid targets back to the sideline. If you don't have anything underneath your raid, it technically just sidelines the card. At least that's the ruling that I've been given. Really cool deck. I like it a lot. This is All Hail Britannia Green. Really cool deck. It's actually more fleshed out than you would think. There's a lot of good stuff in it with Cornelia and the other guy. He's the green. It's the green dude. Oh, I'm so bad with names. His name is so iconic too. He's so good in the show. Siegfried, maybe? It's not Siegfried. Is it? Well, that was his thing. Oh, Jeremiah. Jeremiah, that's his name. So you run the Jeremiah in it. You run the Cornelia. Just a good overall, like, you get to run some of these lower raid targets. Like, these only cost 3 energy, 1 action point, and they just go on top of Royal Guards. And this thing is 2,500. Raid, switch to active, may move to the front line. If this character has 4,000 more BP, it gains impact 1. You can boost it to that pretty easy in this deck. And then if on the front line, this character gains 500 BP for each other character on your front line. So say you have 3, you bring it up, that's 1500, puts you right at the 4. But even if that's not the case, there's other cards that boost it. Really good. All these raids are good. You will run in the deck. This one has the same one. The Cornelia one lets you search for one, and then play 2 energy, 1 AP cost for free, set to resting. So she helps you swarm the board. And then the other one is just a good double blocker. And then this character gains 1000 BP, so 4000 BP double blocker. But this only goes on Pureblood faction. So the issue with the deck is trying to build it between Pureblood and the other archetype. But the Jeremiah is just a double blocker straight up himself with Step, and it's a really cool deck. I definitely would look into playing it because the King kind of lets you, play them out too. This is a key card for the deck. A 3 energy 2 action point. When played, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Add 1 card among them to your hand, any card, and then place remaining at bottom. Reduce the AP cost of next event you use from your hand this turn by 1. Really cool deck. I like the deck a lot. I built it. I think it can do things a little faster than these. It can be controlled by them. I put it right around here. I think it can do things a little bit faster than this. I don't know. I put it with these other 3 swarm decks. I like how Kogios got a swarm deck for each of the colors, which is a really cool way to do it. All right, let's go. Purple Kogios, the Gawain deck, Lelouch of the Rebellion. This deck is really strong. I like it a lot. I love Lelouch. You get to play the Gawain. You get to play the Mach 2s. All super strong cards. Really consistent deck. I think 80% of the deck is got triggers too. So things that happen in life. Maybe even 90%. All the cards do that. So you always get to see your cards. You got ways to clear the board, reduce DP, force things to block and have impact. It does a little bit of everything. And I think it's less reliant on trying to see certain things, whereas the Yuji Sukuna has to see the fingers. I think it's a little bit easier for this deck to get going, and it has a lot of payoff with a lot of raid targets because the Gawain raids on to Lelouch and C2, and the mechs all raid on Callan, which is a really good card. I think the hardest thing about this deck is figuring out the way you want to build it and the cards you want to play in it. But you can't go wrong. This deck's super strong, really cool. Probably takes a little more time than these 3, maybe, to like know your plays. The plays are interesting in this deck. It's really cool. Super strong deck. Good payoff. Not as high to the ground as this, but really strong deck. I love it a lot. And to talk about Lelouch, so there's a separate purple deck I've seen with Lelouch playing a lot more of the 2-drops and the C2s and trying to get value with that. And it's a good deck. I like this deck a lot too. I think maybe it's too slow for those 2 decks with being able to swarm. But around here with these decks, a really good deck because you still run the Gawains. You just don't run some of the other package of the mechs, which gives you less raid targets but more value from playing 2 costs and boosting your board and kind of manipulating your opponent's hand and characters. But the Gawain's just so strong too, that raid. So I'll put it there above that. I think this version of the deck is a little slower, but a little more. You get to do some different things to your opponent that maybe they're not expecting, while still getting to run the Gawain mech. It's a cool deck. Maybe I'll make a deck profile for you guys. Tell me in the comments below. 3 more decks to go. Let's go. Sad to say it, I love this deck. I love the Zoldyck family, but it just feels like it doesn't have enough, which is weird because it has so many cards that are Zoldicks, but it's a little too slow. And once again, raid is so important in this game, and not having a raid target makes it really hard to play the game. And you do have the raid, but he's not the raid. which is the issue. Like you want Silva Zoldyck to be the raid, and Illumi Zoldyck is the raid. Which it's a great card. Like he's good. He helps you cycle, do really cool things. He has the damage too when played. Choose one of your opponent's characters. You gain draw two at the character sideline. The drop before this one just lets you draw a card when you play it. And the deck has really cool ways to kill your opponent's characters. And then Silva, when he comes down, like he is strong because he has impact always. He's 4,000. And the activate main plays 2 cards from your hand to the sideline. He gains snipe, which is really really cool to just always have snipe. But maybe if he was 4,500, like that would make him a little bit better. Something more for the 2 action point. I know they were trying to be maybe a little safe with him, but him not being a raid and being 2 action points, it hurts. It does hurt, but he's really cool. You can do some cool plays with him. It's a fun deck. I have it built. I like it a lot. I'll put it above the Renji Rush in these. It's a cool deck. I like it a lot. I put a lot of time into it though, so I know some of the matchups to go into it, and he has interesting ways to clear the board and get value off of it. But it's keeping a lot of cards in your hand is the issue. And if the deck had a lot more draw power, you wouldn't mind throwing away the cards to get snipe every turn. But you find yourself a lot of times playing this out on your back line and not getting to really use it because you want to play on the front line for 2 and then just have them clear him off the board. So a lot of times you're playing Silva on the back and then moving him up to get the snipe to clear their bodies. And you have ways to, boost your DP and reduce their DP. So it's a cool play, but they see it coming and you don't get the impact of it that turn. So if it was a raid, I would even understand, like, just give it the raid. Keep the 2 action points, that's fine, whatever. It gets to get snipe every turn, you trash, and it has impact 1. But it should have been a raid card. I stand true to it. Same thing with the Geto. Gojo, I mean. All right, let's go Nanami next. My boy Nanami. This is a cool deck. Depending on how you build it, a lot of people play like the Sukuna Yuji kind of in it too. I just think he's just a versatile package. So you run him, and you run some of the other good blue stuff that cycles. A lot of the same stuff that Sukuna does. So whenever I tell people about this deck, it's almost like, well, why don't I just why don't I just play Sukuna then if I'm trying to play blue good stuff? But if you want to switch it up, he's cool. He does it in a different way. Yeah, this Maki, she's super important in this deck. Yeah, during your opponent's turn, if you have 1 or more Cursed Tool Affinity cards or 4 more events, it goes up to 3,000. So it's a 3,000 2-drop pretty much. 2 energy, 1 action point. And when play, look at top 2 cards of your deck, add 1 to your hand, place the other one into your sideline. So you get to cycle putting them your deck. It's a really cool deck because he wants you to be down to the 15 cards to get the impact 1 and damage 2, which you can do really quick in this deck with the draw 3, trash 2 spell. It's something like that. And then like these other cards let you draw a card. Like you run this just lets you draw a card, gives something 2,000 DP. So these 2 cards are really good with controlling the board. Because this one sideline is 2,500 BP less. These 2 cards are really really good. And then the draw spell. But I like him a lot. I'll put him, if you build it and you just build Sukuna with Nanami in it, then maybe S tier. But I separated this for a reason, because if you're just wanting to build Nanami and play it, really good strong deck, I'd put it up here with these. Maybe above Lelouch. It's really strong. I like the deck a lot. It just takes getting to that 15. But before you even get to the 15 less of your deck, you have some power with those curse tools. They're slept on cards. They're really, really strong cards. Boost something by 2,000, draw a card. Sideline in 2,500 or less. Like, you're able to do some stuff with those cards that this deck is, I think, very slept on just trying to run him. Really good card. Really good deck. And last, Kurapika. First deck I built. Really strong. Definitely up in the S tier meta decks. All of these decks, I think it's nice to have so many now because they all kind of do certain things against each other. But with that being said, I think this deck is a little less consistent because unlike Suzaku, who gets to run so many Suzakus and other cards that kind of help him out. Kurapika is just like a lot of random, good green things that help you out, and no way to kind of recur it. Where Suzaku, I don't know. This one's tough. It's definitely S tier. I think I put it on the bottom only because Suzaku has more of a payoff and is maybe a little more inconsistent, but it takes a little longer to get there. Whereas Kurapika, you know, you get you get there a little bit quicker, and the payoff is strong, but it's only for that turn. You unless you have the Emperor's Time, which you have to hope to see to keep doing the cool stuff. But really strong deck. I like it a lot. It's my favorite deck. It's what I play most of the time. Definitely can still do really cool things and have big bodies. But the payoff is a little bit more Suzaku, and I think maybe a little more consistent. But the plays in Suzaku are more straightforward, whereas you can do a little bit different things with the Kurapika. Um, really just putting these three decks ahead of these two kind of top end, because this is top end, strong, big bodies. Um, Whereas these three decks don't have that high of a ceiling, but maybe a little bit more consistent and a little faster. And it's just kind of play styles, really. You could build these two decks maybe a little lower to ground with other packages to try to combat this stuff, and I'm looking forward to see what people do. But I think it's nice to see, I think, a good variety of, like, these are definitely the top 5 decks. I think most people would say that all 5 of these are, the top 5 decks, which makes sense. This one from that set, that from that set, that from set. Each set is going to have a deck that is definitely one of the stronger ones. It's nice that Kogios had 2. Like, both these decks are crazy powerful. But like I said, with that being said, like, all of these decks can compete. I think Union Arena is in a great spot. All of these decks are playable, maybe missing some stuff. Especially really, let's do this to make it more like how it should be. Move the decks that I was just about to say, I think, lose to some of those down here. And then that will make it a little more like how it should be. Yeah, because I think that these decks can definitely do stuff a little bit better and faster than these decks can. Yeah, that looks way better. That's more honest. I like these decks a lot too, but they're not on the same level as these other decks. Where I believe a lot of these decks can beat any of these decks too. Whereas these 6 decks, you would probably see perfect lines and hands and still not be able to beat one of these S or A tier decks. But even that being said, like, these 3 tiers, all these decks here, all super good, strong decks. It just shows that the game is in a healthy place. But down in the comments, let me know. Tell me what you think about my tier list. I know this video is long, but I like to talk a lot and I love the game. I'm going to make more content, and I appreciate you guys hanging out with me.